Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another video. We are here today with Avi Flambaum, who is the Chief Product Officer of Flatiron School, also one of the co-founders of Flatiron School, which is the Bootcamp that both Phil and I attend. And we are just hoping to have a discussion and kind of find out more about what you do, kind of how you got into the business, and where you plan to head in the future with the business, and also with your personal life and kind of from an entrepreneur standpoint as well.
Great.
So,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being on with us. So, kind of just to start it off, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
So I'm Avi, one of the founders of Flatiron School. Grew up in New York. I remember like the internet came out when I was like 11. Signed on to it. Thought it was gonna be a big deal. People would be buying stuff on it soon. Started teaching myself how to code. And I've really been doing that ever since. I had my first job at a startup a few blocks away, actually, cityfeet.com, when I was like 16. So I would leave school, go and clock hours, get paid like $10 an hour. And then, so I went to University of Wisconsin for like a year and a half. I was studying creative writing. Didn't really take college too seriously, or actually high school even. And eventually dropped out to start working at a hedge fund as a programmer when I was like 20. Worked at the hedge fund for like 4 years, left the hedge fund to start my first company called Designer Pages. Was there for around 4 years, and then when I left that, I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, and one of my friends, Mike, started Skillshare, which at the time was kind of a marketplace for in-person classes.
Okay.
And he like called me and was like, look, you're not doing anything, do you mind teaching programming classes? And I was like, yeah, I mean, no one's going to come to my classes, but sure. And I started teaching, and really enjoyed it. I would start mentoring my students and getting them jobs, and I was doing that for like 7-8 months. I wasn't sure what I was building towards, but I was having a lot of fun. You know, helping people get jobs meant a lot to me. Yeah. Sharing kind of the skills that I kind of banged my head against the wall for 20 years, teaching myself with people meant a lot, and kind of snowballed, and now I'm here. And that was around like 8 years ago, and then we started the school like 7 years ago.
Kind of snowballed. It just all happened at once.
Yeah, I mean, it picks up momentum. Kind of as an entrepreneur, I always like equate it to like peeling paint off the wall. Like you kind of like get this like little itch, and you take a little, like I was like, oh, teaching, this is kind of interesting. I wonder what happens if I peel a little more, and then if I do more classes, and I start mentoring people, and then, next thing you know, like there's this whole kind of thing you wanted to make.
So just backtracking a little bit, you didn't go to college to study code. I feel like that's something that is very apparent in a lot of people's lives when it comes to code. It's a lot of times it's a career shift. So just out of curiosity, why didn't you continue with creative writing?
Well, I would have continued with creative writing. I mean, I love writing. It was more just that I didn't want to continue with college. Yeah, I mean, I was trying to be a creative writing major, but you have to apply to that. I'd applied once already and gotten rejected. So I hadn't been able to declare my major at the time I dropped out, but that was my intention. But I still love writing. I mean, writing curriculum was my favorite part of working at the school so far, was developing a lot of our curriculum.
Right, cool.
Yeah, so you said that you got your first position, major position there at 20, doing programming work, right?
Yep.
So what languages did you know at the time, and was it mostly self-taught, and when did you kind of really start and get into that learning curve for programming?
Yeah, so I remember when I was like really young, like 12, starting to publish on the internet, and I don't even think CSS had come out yet. Like I remember when CSS came out, so I remember in the beginning.
Very early stages?
Yeah, styling a website with like font tags.
Yeah.
There's no positioning, you're just using tables to basically create a grid.
Right.
And then I remember there was something called like Home Site, which was like a really early like WYSIWYG for making web pages, and then Dreamweaver came out. And I remember playing a lot with Dreamweaver and Home Site to make early web pages. But the problem with those kind of apps was that if you ever wanted it to do something that like the app couldn't do, like in terms of layout or design or functionality, you either had to get really good at like learning how to use Dreamweaver, and the entire time I was aware that like all Dreamweaver was doing was like exporting HTML. Right. And I decided that it made more sense to learn HTML than like Dreamweaver, because like I didn't want to get locked into Dreamweaver. I wanted to actually learn like the what Dreamweaver was actually doing.
And how old were you at this time?
Probably like around 11, 12.
Wow, so you've been doing it for quite some time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Jeez. And then, so I got HTML was kind of like the first language. That's actually not even true. Like I mean, BASIC and like Turbo Pascal were like some of the first like programming languages. HTML was my first like markup language. Right, okay. Then I remember when I was in high school, there was kind of the start of like the web standards movement. Like I remember reading books by Jeffrey Zeldman and Molly Shansrick, and there were all these kind of developers and designers that were really like into creating a really beautiful and functional and accessible open web. Right. And they were pushing, semantic markup, CSS. Like I remember there was a book called CSS Zen Garden, which was this one HTML file that everyone could apply a different style sheet to and make look drastically different, which was kind of demonstrating the power of a separation between like style and content. So I got really inspired by the work they were doing. I definitely knew I wanted to build on the internet. And eventually you start making all these websites, and you want to have a shared navigation so you don't have to recode it all. And you eventually like start learning about databases. I remember there was Perl and CGI for like web forms and stuff like that. And I remember, I think the first language, like I remember learning SQL. I remember ASP, which was kind of like Microsoft's version of like web-based VB, basically. Then I started building, when I was in high school, I made flumbaum.com, like a personal website. And as I wanted to add functionality, like it was basically a really early blog. I don't know if the term blog had even come out yet, but it was like a journal, and I would write all these crazy stories, and like, I had like a login system, people could leave comments. I let one of my friends take over the site like once a week, and he had the site, when he took over it, it was called Parasite, because he would just make fun of me.
Parasite.
I ran a contest for my prom date on the website, so people had to apply to be my prom date, and my readers could like,
how'd that go?
Yeah, I mean, I rigged it.
Naturally.
Yeah, my girlfriend was really upset when I told her she had to apply. But then my readers would like vote on it. Like it was really interesting. I was having a lot of fun, like kind of experimenting with the medium. I built a lot of apps for the school. Like we had like a charity club, and like I built like a web-based app so they could like collect donations for different kinds of events. I got out of gym class by building like the sports teams' websites with like a calendar, so I don't have to go to gym class anymore. I just kept on trying to find out ways to like use building things on the internet as like a way to get ahead in life. It seemed like the only thing I could do really well, and I really loved doing it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely where the world is going, even now. So you starting that early has obviously been very beneficial for you. Just a question I have, and I know a lot of people at Flatiron are curious to know, do you work on your own projects right now? Do you still have things that you're creating?
No, not really. I mean, Flatiron's a pretty full-time job, and when I do, I have so many ideas for like Flatiron, I guess. So like, if I was going to build something, I would probably want to build one of the ideas for Flatiron. But I really try not to let myself do that. I get pretty obsessed with projects. So if I start building something, I'll be up until 4 in the morning. I won't want to do other stuff. So I try to like, not let myself go down that rabbit hole. But yeah.
So I just want to talk a little bit about the starting of Flatiron. So you said it's been 7 years now, it may seem like it's gone by fast, but that's a relatively long time, especially in the age of evolving tech. So can you just expand on how that process kind of began, who was involved, and you don't really have to mention any names, but more how many people did you have involved in that process, and what was your specific role in maybe some of these other select people's roles in the beginning of this company?
Yeah, my co-founder had taken my class and really liked it, and then tweeted at me and asked to get coffee. And when I told him like what I was doing, and he noticed that I was like mentoring these students and getting them jobs. He said, and that was basically, you know, why I was still teaching, was mostly for those students.
Right.
He said, why don't you just focus on that? And I was like, well, what would that look like? And he said that he had heard of this guy, Sharif Bizray, in San Francisco, that posted on Hacker News that he was just gonna teach 8 people how to code in his apartment until they could get them a job. Like, I should go to San Francisco and meet Sharif. And he also told me about this guy that I'd heard of before, Jeff Casimir, who was running something called Hungry Academy out of Living Social. Living Social was a DC startup, kind of like Groupon.
Right.
And they couldn't hire developers, so they hired this guy, Jeff, to basically start a school inside of Living Social, and anyone who graduated would be able to get a job at Living Social.
Right.
So Sharif ended up starting Dev Bootcamp. So I flew to San Francisco, I hung out with Sharif, I started doing some video chats with Jeff, and we were all kind of thinking the same kind of thing, like this bootcamp model, this like very high intensity, you know, all day, every day, learn how to code, get a job. So I started planning that out over the summer, I guess of 2011, 12, something like that. And at that point it was just me. You know, my co-founder was a venture capitalist, he was still working. And then we made a website, put it up, rented an office, bought some desks, and then just started taking applications. And, you know, he would kind of moonlight on like helping me think through the beginning of it. And then we started, and that was it. That was the first class. It was just, he wasn't even a full-time employee at that point. It was just me with 20 random people I found to come take this crazy thing.
Wow.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I actually met someone pretty recently at Flatiron that said his sister was in the first.
Right. I do remember.
Yeah, I think it was the first mod
Yeah,
ever.
Jenya, probably.
Is that?
Well, she's in DC,
Yeah,
so.
So probably, yeah.
I can't imagine there are too many of them out there in DC.
She said that you guys were in like a small apartment and just like, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that it's went from that to what it is now.
What did you? I mean, there must have been some, I guess, fears in that process of starting up. Did you feel like you were risking something, getting that office space and kind of having, I guess, getting a group of people to actually come and do this course? Because even now, some people are still skeptical about bootcamp programs or intensive software intensives. So, how did that?
So I guess I was scared of a lot of things. So I'd been teaching a while, and I had a bunch of people that I knew would be good candidates for this class. So I was kind of like one by one getting people I knew would be good applicants that would want to do this.
Right.
And then I also ran NYC on Rails, which is a pretty large meetup for a long time. So I had a good network there. So I wasn't super worried about getting I mean, we were looking for 20 people. I think we got like 120 applicants for the first class.
Wow.
So the thing I was most scared of, I guess, was like, what if it didn't work? Like, these people were going to quit their jobs and like take this full time.
Right.
And the thing I was most scared of was like, what if they're just not,
doesn't work?
yeah, what if they're just not employable? Like,
Right.
I would, ruin these 20 people's lives.
Oh my gosh.
We made the tuition for the first class like $5,000 because I was like so scared of like screwing people.
Right.
But I figured like, if as long as like you're willing to work hard, like I would get them where they needed to go.
Right.
But that's what I was really scared of. And then the other thing I was really scared of was what it would do to me. Like doing a startup, at least I don't know how other people feel about it, but it's like you have to be pretty crazy and pretty obsessive. And I was in a pretty like good place at that point. Like I was like doing yoga and like going on juice cleanses and like working out a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like,
stressful.
yeah, I was really worried about like, I knew that for my last startup that like what was going to happen was that this was going to just take over my entire life and like all other things were going to go out the window.
Naturally.
So I was just more worried about like that, it's like you're like looking down a cliff and you're just like, I guess I'm going to jump and it's just going to be a long way down.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
It's paid off, clearly. I mean,
Evidently. So one more personal question. What actually? I guess it's kind of two more because they're integrated with each other. So what is your personal role at Flatiron? What do you kind of do on a daily basis? Even from the beginning to end of the day.
So my role right now, I'm a chief product officer. So I run the technology team that builds our LMS, Learn, and provides technology services to the company.
Right.
So that's what I'm doing right now. I still work with the academics department in terms of like curriculum pedagogy and teacher training. I also still teach occasionally if a student reaches out to me or if I want to experiment with some curriculum. So that's what I do now. My role has changed many times. I was the first instructor. I started the curriculum department. I built Learn, the first version of it, and put it online and ran the online course for the first year. So I've done kind of a lot of different roles, but I've been in this role for like I think just over 2 years now.
Right. So what time do you kind of get into the office?
As early as possible. I mean, I guess I don't like the morning, so when I wake up, my goal is from the second I wake up, I just want to get out of my apartment as fast as possible. So generally between like 8:30, 9, some days earlier, very rarely later than that.
Right. And you're in and around the campus throughout the day?
I work out of our headquarters, which is where we're in right now. So this is just staff. There's I think around 185 people that work out of here.
Oh, this is only staff?
Yeah, and then we have the campus downtown at 11 Broadway, which is our main campus. Then we have a campus in Dumbo.
Do you show up to those ever?
Yeah, so I still do every orientation. Generally like once a week I'm on campus to do an orientation. We stream it to all the other campuses and online, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said there's 185 staff members just in this corporate office?
Yep.
Wow. And then I guess overall between all the other campuses across the U.S. and London now, correct? What is the full employee count for the company?
325 full-time, and then we have a bunch of part-time contract people. But yeah, it's crazy.
And then how many of those are in-person staff members? And I guess you can exclude the corporate office, but maybe from an instructor standpoint, how many of those are remote online instructors, and how many of them are in-person instructors, if you have that number?
I am honestly not sure. I think there's probably like a 60-70 person faculty. So, but they're distributed online, remote, and in person at every campus.
Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So let's talk about Flatiron kind of a little bit more. With so many other boot camps, and I don't even want to use the word boot camp anymore because it's kind of evolved past that. I feel like
just program.
Yeah, program. It's schooling in a way. I mean, not even in a way. It's a school.
Someone asked what we're doing.
Yeah, we just say we're going to school. So there are a lot of other programs popping up, and not only popping up, so many of them already exist across the world. How does Flatiron see itself as a unique competitor in this market? What are you doing that is kind of setting yourself ahead of the competition from whether it be curriculum-wise or a business standpoint? What do you see you guys doing as a unique?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. It's hard to always answer because I don't know. I've never been to any other schools. I know some of the founders of them, but it's hard to know exactly what they're doing in order to be able to say like, well, they teach this or they have this pedagogy belief or whatever. Right. I know what we really care about. We really care about like what it feels like to learn, the community, making it like a lovable experience. We really care about rigor and making sure that like we're not trying to like hack people to getting a job, but like really going for depth and competency. Yeah, I mean, there's I think a sense of like passion we want our students to really like love the craft, so that they want to be great at it.
Right. So you kind of focus on what you're doing rather than what your competitors are doing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way to like run a company. You can't focus on what other people are doing. It's a question of just like, what do you believe? How do you want to manifest that in the world? I think Flatiron. One thing I've always kind of felt, because I always hated the term boot camp. That's why we're Flatiron School. I also hated the code reactor kind of like branding. I just liked like Flatiron School, it's a school.
Because you're not limiting yourself by calling it Flatiron School.
Yeah.
And you can start to bring in other concepts like UI and UX, which in majority isn't code. It's design fundamentals.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely a smart way to kind of tackle the identity of the school.
So I mean, you know, as a school, I think the kinds of things you have to create are like the format of your course, right? So how is it delivered? Is it, you know, so in the beginning we were 12 weeks, 5 days a week, 9 to 6. And, you know, that format, I remember kind of, as I started seeing all these other schools pop up, they all seemed to copy what like Sharif and Jeff and I had kind of like pioneered, this like boot camp, so to speak, model. And the funny thing about it was that, like, you know, what we basically did was like throw a dart at the wall and then draw a circle around it, and we're like bullseye, which is really easy, and everyone just copied that. But the truth is that like we have changed formats a lot, like over the last 7 years. Like we made the program 15 weeks, we broke it up into these modules. We have an online program, we have a self-paced program, we have a part-time program, and like, you know, I think that the pioneering of the program delivery and the format is something that we're really good at, and we think so much about the experience, you know, from forcing students to blog, to having them make them present at a meetup, to like the test-driven curriculum, to how even Learn works and how we instrument like the behavior of the students so that we can see who's struggling and who needs support. Right. Like, I mean, you know, there's so much that we put into how this would work, like just, you know, we manage curriculum on GitHub, and students are forking labs and, you know, running tests. Like there was so much that we put into it to kind of allow us to be what we are. How, you know, we think about like pedagogy and curriculum, how we think about coaching and community. You know, those are the things that I think that like allowed us to really grow and to continue innovating, was that we were actually trying to innovate and not copy. Right. You know, we were the first school to do outcome reports and say, you know, these are our job numbers. We were the first school to offer a money back guarantee. Oh, really? You know, those were all kind of like lines in the sand that we were like, yeah, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to make this work. And, you know, a lot of times people thought we were crazy, and then immediately just copied it. Like, I mean, there was literally a school that wrote an article in TechCrunch after our job guarantee and was like, you know, that can't happen. Like, you can't guarantee someone a job, and that's true. We can't guarantee someone a job, but we can guarantee someone a refund if they can't get a job. Right. And then, like, literally, like 4 months later, job guarantee by that school. Like, I like moving, I like forcing the industry, both, I mean, the bootcamp, whatever, vocational, let's call it like vocational schools 2.0. I like moving that industry forward and forcing them to change. And then I also like moving the traditional education industry. Like, you know, I want to be a force that forces other schools to change.
Right. And I think this is obviously an ever-changing industry. So, I mean, just out of curiosity.
You would think so, but education is pretty inert. Oh, right. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, you walk into a college and it looks exactly the same as it did 100 years ago. Right.
But just in terms of the languages, do you see it changing anytime soon, like as in your curriculum now?
Yeah, I mean, we've updated our curriculum. I mean, you know, in the beginning we were teaching jQuery, then we were teaching Angular. Now we teach React. Like, I still think Ruby's a great back-end language.
Good introduction to
object. But you know, I mean, I don't think that. Yeah, I mean, I think that like even like those are really nuanced changes. Like the difference between teaching Angular or jQuery or React is pretty, you know, minor. I think you need to update your curriculum to make sure that it's still like that it's still accurate. But like we still teach web development and software engineering, and as much as it seems as though that's always changing, it also always isn't. And I guess like, you know, I have
it does, it's minor.
Yeah, I mean, like I guess I have a unique, like, I mean, I'm pretty young, but I've been in this industry for a very long time, and I've seen the cyclical trends of it. Mm-hmm. So while it does seem like it's always changing, it's also way more static than you'd imagine. Like programming is programming, like web development is web development. Like there's a lot of, you know, big innovations, but for the most part, like before Git, there was Subversion and Mercurial, and there was always version control, and you know. Like before Mongo, there was, you know, Memcached and Redis, and you know.
We also had a request from a Flatiron student about iOS. Were you thinking that?
I was thinking that.
Yeah, so we taught iOS for a while. You know, in the beginning we taught it with Objective-C, and then we taught it with Swift. We stopped teaching iOS for two main reasons. One is it is way harder to get a job as kind of an entry-level iOS developer. Mm-hmm. Very few people start their careers in code on iOS. they're generally coming to that platform from some other experience programming already. And then two, it just focus, like, you know, how many things can you do well? I always also thought, like, you know, as at the time when we were teaching iOS, like, mobile was all the rage. I think people talk less about mobile, and it's just the platform. As in, like, put your phone on airplane mode. Like, tell me how interesting it is.
Not many people do that,
right.
Unfortunately.
The reason why your phone is interesting is because it connects to the internet.
Right.
It's making requests from the web, you know, things like that. So being an iOS developer is really about understanding how to create the interface on the phone to consume data that's provided by some web service. That's a pretty, like, you know, small aspect of programming. You know, I think that we kind of, that makes the job market harder and things like that. So we just, you know, at some point we're like, yeah, we're just going to go all in on full stack software engineering. You know, you want to learn iOS afterwards, it's not that hard.
Yeah, it seems like with this type of curriculum that Flatiron offers, there's a lot of ways you can kind of self-evolve afterwards and begin to learn other languages and platforms just because it's relevant to that material, and the fundamentals are all pretty similar across the board.
Yeah, we've had students go on to be, you know, blockchain developers in Ethereum, and we've had students, you know, work at Boeing and write Java, at NASA, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Like,
based off of what Flatiron has to offer, how do you think it differs from university? And, you know, whether it's curriculum or the outcomes for specifically how many people are getting jobs, or related material. What is there one better than the other?
So it differs from university for college in a lot of ways. I also don't think that it's necessarily an apt comparison, because I don't think that our current format, I don't think, is a replacement for college or even an alternative. You know, we generally are very cautious about enrolling like an 18, 19, 20-year-old into the school. Basically, someone at the company, generally me, has to agree to mentor the person afterwards, because we can teach them how to code and then get them a job in 15 weeks. The problem is that they're still 18 and don't know, you know, how, yeah, they don't know anything about health insurance, or like, yeah, what it takes to like get an apartment, you know, and like what being a guarantor means, or having a guarantor on a lease. They don't understand like bank accounts and credit scores, and
over the next 5 years, there's a huge.
Oh yeah, and life comes at you super fast when you like. You know, one thing that college does is it simply just buys time. Like you just grow up.
Absolutely.
So if it teaches you nothing else, at least it just makes you 4 years older, right? So I just don't think it's a 15-week boot camp. I just don't think is like speaks to necessarily an 18-year-old. That alone, at least. But one of the big differences, I think there's a lot of opportunity cost of 4-year education. So like that's 4 years that you're not making money where you could be making money. So it's just a question of like, do students want that? If they want it, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, it's hard to, I guess the ways in which Flatiron School differs from university are less interesting to me than what a college alternative I would design would look like, and how would that thing be different than university. So I think a lot about, I guess, the illusion of choice in colleges. All colleges are basically the same, right? So whether you're going to Harvard or Duke or, you know, University of Texas or some community college, you're buying the same product. It's this idea of a degree. You're going to accumulate a certain amount of credits in a certain topic, and then get a degree in that topic. How they deliver that, whether it's part-time, full-time, on campus, online, that's basically the thing, right? And I always think about kind of like, you know, before the iPhone, you had the illusion of choice in smartphones. You could get like a Palm or a BlackBerry, but they're all a screen with a big keyboard. And now you have the illusion of choice in smartphones, which is they're all just basically a brick made out of glass. Right? There needs to be just a canonically different product that creates actually consumer choice. Because right now the only choice you can make is go to college or not. And the not is really scary for most people, and the go to college just doesn't work for half the people.
I mean, I can confidently say that I didn't learn as much as I am now as I probably did in college.
Well, I mean, like half the people that enroll in a 4-year program just are never going to graduate. That's the statistics. Half the people in the country don't even go to college. So you're already talking about like 25%. Right, and then only 25% of college grads are working a job that requires their degree. So you have massive underemployment. So the problem is that we, as a country, say everyone should go to college, and all the data suggests that it's not probably for everybody. Right. The problem is that there is no alternative. There is no other thing you can do. You can go to a different college, but you're still going to something like of that format. Right. So one, I think a lot about choice. 18-year-olds should not need to make so many choices. Like, I remember getting that like 400-page Wisconsin course catalog and being like, what? And you know, like, I was supposed to choose between all these classes, and I don't understand prerequisites, and what is this? I'm trying to compile a major, and I need to earn these credits, and I've got these requirements, and you know, the class I wanted to take was full, so now I gotta like, I'm in zoology 101 suddenly, you know.
Writing composite.
Yeah. Just in these random classes that don't mean anything for your future.
I mean, after a semester, you're basically like, okay, what classes do I need to take to only have to be in class from 11 to 2? Right. Yeah. Like, can I possibly pack my schedule so I have days off?
No 8 a.m.s and as many onlines as possible. Yeah. Like,
can I do Tuesdays and Thursdays only?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I still like the idea of, much like Flatiron, like, I don't want, if I had a college alternative, I just don't want to put that much choice to it. You're going to learn a vocation, like, let's say you'll spend 7 months learning, you know, software engineering, and as you're learning that, we can still sprinkle in a lot of the liberal arts stuff that you would cover, or that I would want someone to learn that's 18. Like, you know, in programming, like, abstraction is a huge topic, right? The art of, like, removing and concealing information. Yeah, and abstraction, you know, covers like abstract art, and we could talk about Picasso, we could talk about Mozart, we could talk about music. Like, there's so many different ways to integrate other topics into a vocation. Right. So I think that, like, it's just about kind of being really attention-oriented or detail-oriented when you're designing curriculum. Because I do want an 18-year-old to know who Picasso is. Absolutely. And to understand, like, you know, different kinds of abstract art. Because like,
that's going to make them think differently about life, probably.
Yeah, I mean, the more
definitely help them in the real world.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, just the texture of your life is richer the more that you know, like, the more you notice. So, like, you know, I don't want it to just be like, okay, you can code. I want them to understand, like, a lot of other things. So, yeah, it would be kind of like that, but I would still not allow them to choose classes. I'd get them a coach. Like, I love our career coaches. I think they're amazing, and like, you know, like, they should be talking to someone once a week about, like, how they're doing, how they're planning, how their goals are, how their goal setting is going, like, you know, what they're struggling with. Yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of ideas for a college alternative. I mean, that's the thing I'm most excited about doing, and I think sometime in the next 2 years we'll have something that is not degree granting and doesn't look like a traditional university, and doesn't try to, but does speak to an 18-year-old.
Right. That being said, just as far as expansion and being able to maybe implement some of these bigger bigger pictures into the basic concepts that Flatiron has developed, as far as the acquisition that WeWork had over Flatiron. So WeWork essentially acquired Flatiron, right? How, from a business perspective and maybe just growth for Flatiron, has that influenced the company, and where do you see Flatiron heading to in the future because of that acquisition? Yeah,
it's been pretty amazing. I mean, WeWork is an incredible company, and you know, Adam and Miguel and Artie and Jen and all the execs at WeWork are awesome people. And we weren't really looking to sell the school. We had met Adam and kind of really got along with him and see the world in the same way. And it kind of just worked. You know, I still love, like, a lot of my entrepreneur friends were kind of like, what are you going to do next? And I was like, I don't think there's a next. I think I'm here for a while. So they really we have a lot of trust with them, and they let us basically operate entirely independently. So they, you know, help us think about how to grow and where to focus, but they leave the decision to us, and they approve our budgets, and they provide us amazing campuses and a lot of, you know, good, like, support. And I mean, you know, they've scaled in similar ways that we have, so that we can learn a lot from how, you know, not making the same mistakes they made. But yeah, I mean, it really just gives us kind of a global footprint, easy access to beautiful spaces, incredible mentorship and resources from their team. But for the most part, you know, they just want to see us help elevate the world and, you know, provide people with educations that allow them to make a life and not just a living.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just out of curiosity, what advice would you give to someone that does have that entrepreneurial spirit? Because coding obviously is something that can definitely be utilized to create things and, you know, to make new things. Just what, you being an entrepreneur, what advice would you give to someone that wants to create something for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, a lot of people are just like, oh, if I just could learn how to code, I could, be an entrepreneur. I mean, I think being able to build stuff is really important, but ultimately, like, creating a business is really difficult. Creating a product that people like or love, understanding marketing, understanding sales, operations, like there's so much. The best thing you could do is work at a startup and like pay attention to what the founders are doing, what the heads of the departments are doing, and try to really understand why they prioritize things or how they think about stuff. It's so easy to look at a company and be like, oh, they're just doing this because they want to grow, but there's so many reasons. Like companies have to make money, otherwise no one's gonna have a job.
Right.
Understanding marketing and product market fit, being able to understand like what people would be willing to pay for, like where's the value transfer, how do you create like loyalty and trust with your customers, how do you have like organic marketing, how do you iterate on a product until you find a fit, how do you build departments and staff and set goals and performance management, and it's just a lot. It's so hard. The easiest thing to do is just start, but you got to take it seriously and you got to realize that like it's not, I don't know, like
consistency.
Yeah, one of my best friends, I met him when I was 20, and we both like at that point he was a designer working at an agency and I was a programmer at a hedge fund, but we both wanted to like be entrepreneurs and do the whole startup thing, and like I'd already been wanting to do that since I was like 16. Like I've just been doing this my whole life. Like and I'm not saying that you need to be doing it your whole life to be like good at it, but you just got to realize that it's not casual. Like there is no entrepreneur that takes what the business and the product they're creating casually. Like we read books, we look at other people's products, we analyze everything, we talk to other entrepreneurs, we work a lot because it's really hard and you can't learn it and you can't fake it. And if you just, if you think it's casual, you're in for a rude awakening once you actually get there. I must have tried starting like 6 companies before my first one even like existed.
Really?
Yeah, it's like tipping over a Coke machine. You gotta like give it a few, but like they never even got off the ground. Like, one I would try to find a founder and they would quit. And then we would write a business plan and then no one wanted to fund it. Or we would build a prototype and no one wanted to use it. And like, it was never even worth starting a company around all those. But I kept at it. And, I would tell my friends, like, I'm working on this new company. And they'd be like, wow, cool. And then like 4 months later, they'd be like, how's it going? I'm like, nah, I stopped doing that. Now, but this one though, and like, you just gotta like, be resilient and not worry about looking like stupid. You just keep on trying. And
I think just like code in general, being comfortable with failure.
Yeah, you just get good at it. Like you get good at like marketing, networking, all that kind of stuff. It's so much. It's like the amount of information, the depth of knowledge you have to have in each of these things. It's like so much.
As far as growing Flatiron and how that process has gone for you, what is the biggest suggestion you would give to an entrepreneur or a small business owner or somebody looking to grow their concept into something much larger? How would they go about getting that idea in the face of somebody who would be able to help propel that idea, whether it be an investor or whether it be a like-minded individual? What is the number one thing that they need to know to make that idea influential for that person, whether it be finding the right person that might be interested in it, or is it something that they have to do to make it look interesting where it doesn't matter who the investor is?
That's a great question. My first company, we spent a lot of time like pitching venture capitalists and investors, and we eventually were able to raise money, and we didn't quite have a good enough product market fit or a big enough market. At Flatiron, people just came to us and offered us money, just like with acquisition.
One way to do it.
And no, I was going to say the reason why is because we were doing something that people cared about. Build something awesome and like start making money. People are going to notice it. Do it alone, and like people are going to notice even more, right? In terms of like, finding partners, finding investors. Like if you're building something in a space and your product is remarkable and people are using it and talking about it, people are going to start coming to you and asking, hey, how can I help? How can I get involved? If you don't have something that is remarkable, then you can go pound the pavement and maybe you'll get an investor here or there, but it's going to be a struggle. And then you also got to think like, why am I doing it? Now, upfront money is important because it's hard to build something remarkable without like seed money.
Right.
Can you consult? Can you hustle and raise that money yourself? Can you teach? Can you like scale back what you need in order to like have, you know, the 10% of what you can self-fund or put in through your own, you know, sweat, to be something remarkable? Like there's always a way. Like there's, you know, problems as an entrepreneur, like all there are problems. And at some point you have to shift it to an opportunity. So if the problem is you don't have any money, like how can you still like embrace that and say, okay, I have no money, so thus like anything I do can't require money.
Right, yeah.
So now I just got to be really creative. How can I build this product with no money?
Yeah.
Right.
So I think to kind of wrap it up, and it's even branching off of that, for Flatiron students specifically, because that's really who we're doing this for the Flatiron community. We are online students. Just for the record, everyone already knows we're part-time online students. We're working full-time, but our work is very close to one of the DC WeWorks in the Flatiron campus, right downtown in DC, right next to the White House. And so for G Street, I think.
Oh, we're on 14th Street.
G and 14th. Oh, okay. So we go to the campus probably 3 or 4 times a week, and we wanted to get some questions from the community, and we also did it in Slack and got some other questions for everybody else. And although everyone kind of had different questions, it seemed like they were all formulating the same question, which was what can they do to make the best out of this program, and when they're out, what can they do to get ahead? If you were going through the program yourself, what would you do to make it the best possible opportunity so when you get out, you know you did everything you could to embrace other opportunities if they were to show themselves?
Keeping in mind that a lot of people that are going through don't have prior experience.
Right.
So get discouraged like weekly, like I do sometimes. I didn't have any experience, so sometimes it is discouraging. So just take that into account.
So that's a pretty great question. So one, there's no way I would not get into Flatiron School, nor would I be successful at it. I'm just not like I'm not our student. Like I live both a very I just create my own structure. Like I'm a very structured and routine based person, but I have to just do it myself.
Right.
And I learn in a very like my way.
Yeah.
It was actually one of the interesting things about Flatiron was that I very early on realized that I am not our student and that I need to design everything I'm doing not so that it would work for me, but quite the opposite.
Right.
Work for everyone else.
Yeah. So, right, how to make the most of it, how to succeed. So I guess one thing I think a lot about is it's sort of like I guess it's like surrender. If you've made a decision to like do this, like at some point just stop questioning it and like just surrender to it. Like you don't have to worry about being discouraged. Just don't accept it because you're already here. There's no other option. Like there's no back door. There's no back door. There's no out. There's no quitting. So then just stop. There's no
point to dwell on.
Right, exactly. It's just over. Surrender to it.
Right.
Like this is your life. This is the reality of it. There's only one way forward.
Yeah.
That's forward. Like I was rock climbing with my friend on Saturday, and I was like stuck. I was stuck on a move, and I shouted down, and I was like, hey, no, I was like, where should I, like, what should I do? And he goes, go up. Like,
thank you very much.
Where else did you go, right?
Yeah. I was like,
But he's not wrong.
right. That was the joke. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love climbing. It's because that moment you're like, oh yeah, of course. The only move is up.
Right.
Like I don't climb down, climb up.
Right, yeah.
And that's you surrender to it. Like there's just, and I also think that in that also comes like focus. Like I mean, just like to the extent in which I would build my entire life around this kind of experience. I remember I was talking to an online student when we launched. he was like a security guard at a building in Wall Street and had like seen a bunch of developers working there, and he didn't want to. He was going to go to the police academy and obviously like didn't want to be a cop. And I remember he was like frustrated. He'd been in the program for like 6 months, and he was really frustrated. And he wanted to quit his security job.
Yeah.
But the problem was that was going to put him on a clock where he would eventually run out of money.
Yeah.
And he was really worried about like would I be able. He was talking to me because he wanted to know if I thought he would be able to graduate, like to finish all the material and get a job before he ran out of money.
Right.
And I was like, I don't think you should quit your job. And he was like, yeah, but like that's not what I want to do in my life. Like it's not serving me. And like you always talk about focus and like, you know. And I was like, yeah, but like what you have to just change your perspective about your job, because what your job is allowing you to do is finish this program.
Right.
It is in service of your goal. It's not a distraction. Right? If you weren't coding at night, if you weren't waking up early, then your job is a distraction. But you are. So like the job is like what's allowing you to finish. So don't quit. Like that is part of it. Like when you're at work, try to read a book. Try to read a programming book. But ultimately, like you know, you have to see that as part of it. It's part of this journey. It's what's allowing you the experience. But otherwise, like anything else, it's not serving your goal. Like you need to be like discriminate and disciplined about your life, and like you know, be like, okay, do I really need to be doing this right now? And if the answer that if it's not in service of this, then I think you should probably cut it. You can always add things back in, but like it's easier to like you know surrender and be minimal and be focused when you're just like everything around your life is geared about this. Yeah, I mean, I'm very aware of like the psychological aspects of how difficult the program is. Like I know it's easy for me to say, like don't worry about being discouraged, just stop listening to yourself. It's easy to say that. It's so hard to do. Yeah. But it's the truth. Like it doesn't help. Like anxiety, questioning yourself, like it just doesn't help. Right? It's natural, but it doesn't help.
And that's with everything in life that's hard. You're going to have those thoughts that come in.
Yeah, there's a really good book called A Guide to the Good Life. It's kind of like a recap and a summary of like Stoic philosophy.
I just finished The Power of Now, which is
similar
like that. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that trying to meditate on that kind of stuff, on like you know, are the thoughts I have in my head serving me? Right. And if they're not, why do you have them? And it's again, you can train your mind to what you choose to pay attention to is a learnable thing. So, you know, I think the best way to succeed and to make the most of the program is to really like surrender to it. Right. There's no back. Burn the other bridges.
Absolutely. I think very last question. If you could just rattle off 3 resources that you have to kind of get you into that entrepreneurial, motivational, and just like business mindset, whether it be books or podcasts or something that you listen to regularly or reference to regularly, that has been a great resource for you in this.
And if there is, what is your favorite coding language?
My favorite coding language is definitely Ruby. I really love Ruby. JavaScript has come a long way. I'm pretty into JavaScript now too. I think Elixir is really fun, super fast, a different paradigm. It's a cool one, yeah. So in terms of like, I guess, there's like that HBO documentary about like Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine. I can't remember what it's called, but that like, I remember I was watching that because I think, you know, sometimes I think I work hard. Yeah. And then I was watching that and I was like, oh my God, I have been phoning it in. Right. Like, right. I'm always, I think it's important to realize like that successful people they are so focused. Yeah. They are working so hard. Maybe like at some point they can like, you know, like take a break, but like no one gets there without like a lot of effort. And you know, depending on the industry, it's like different, but they are working at it. They are trying. They are, you know, going to hundreds of auditions. They're going to the gym. They're, you know, practicing their faces look like in the mirror. Like, you know, you watch like documentaries about like Jim Carrey and stuff, and like what he would do when he was like nobody comedian in Canada to like be good. Right. They just work really hard. They're obsessive, and like they understand like what being an expert, what being a professional is, and they put in that time. Just put in the time. So like I guess like, you know, what like when I get really motivated watching other people, and like hearing about how hard it was for them, and like knowing that like, oh, first of all, I'm not even working that hard, and it's not even that hard for me. yeah, I don't know. Trying hard is important. Then I don't know. I mean, the other things that I guess like other entrepreneurs, like besides their effort, like the things that mostly inspire me in life are like life itself. They're not like other entrepreneurs or like how much money someone made. It's like, you know, it's listening to a song, it's, you know, and thinking about how awesome it was and wanting to make something that awesome, reading a book and being like, that was a great book, or reading and like learning something and being like, wow, I loved the way I learned that. Having an experience, like I just want to make really great things that add value to the world. So I guess anything that adds value to my life is what inspires me, and then I'm like, oh my God, I was so lucky to have that experience. I want to create an experience for someone else that gives back that value.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. So thank you very much for letting us come out here and talk to you about all of this. I know it's great to meet you. I think this is going to be very valued by the Flatiron community, and I know just a lot of other people, whoever else wants to watch it.
It's a great community. You guys are awesome. Yeah, it's really cool. Like I really miss. I used to be able to interact with students so much. Yeah. I miss it a lot. Hopefully, I'll be able to get back to that.
Cool. I'm sure people would definitely like that. So.
Absolutely.
Great.
Okay. So